Hi, I'm Dr. Mark Pettis, the medical director of Essential Provisions, a whole food nutrition sports performance company that makes meals ready to eat and sports blends for the warriors of the world. And this is the Mightiest Warriors podcast, which is sponsored by Essential Provisions. And today I am just so pleased to bring to the world our first Mightiest Warrior interview. And I'm delighted to be here with Michael Rod Rodriguez. And Michael, pardon me for working off a paper just to summarize your amazing life. But Rod is the president and CEO of the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation. Rod has and his family, as we'll learn, has a rich intergenerational legacy of service to this country. Rob joined the U.S. Army in 1992, attended the Special Forces Assessment and Selection Course, and became a Green Beret in 1997. In 2013, he was medically retired due to numerous combat injuries. And his last assignment as a Green Beret was as a sniper instructor assigned to the JFK Special Warfare Center at Fort Bragg in North Carolina. Rob has been deployed 10 times over the course of his service. His involvement with GWOT, the Memorial Foundation, began in 2016, and he has served in the CEO, executive director role really for the last few years, since 2021. There is so much I could add, Rod, as I know we'll get into. You've been a member of President George Bush's Military Service Initiative Advisory Council. You helped direct the Afghanistan withdrawal and your advocacy for our troops there. And yours is such a fitting inspiration for stewardship and service, Rod. I know you also delve into artwork and are very attuned to the importance of art and the healing of military recruits, and many have been traumatized. And hopefully we can get into that a little bit. And on behalf of Essential Provisions, thank you, Rod, for being here.
No, I appreciate the opportunity to talk. You could have shortened all that. Say, hey, I got this old retired Army guy. We're gonna have a conversation, and we could have, could have saved you a few minutes, man. I appreciate it though.
Really important that people appreciate the depth of your dedication and service. And so off the top and totally unrelated, Rod, so I'm a physician, and right away, of course, I notice your eye color,
Mhm.
and which the medical term for that is heterochromia.
Heterochromia. Mhm.
And you probably know this, but there's a very rich and interesting connection of heterochromia in the indigenous cultures. The Native Americans looked at, of course, they didn't call it heterochromia, but they saw that attribute as a manifestation of deep spiritual wisdom and an ability to connect to that spirit world. And so just to kind of add that as an aside, I have no doubt of your ability to do that. So
Yeah, well, I'm not sure how much wisdom I have, but yeah, it's I wear a special lens. It's a prosthetic lens that I wear, and I'll, if we got time for a brief story on why it's this way. So, my great grandmother had one blue eye, right? My great grandmother actually had heterochromia, my father's grandmother, and when I was getting fitted, they were like, "Hey, this one will fit, but it doesn't match," right? And I'm like, "Okay, that's fine. I'll take it." So it was blue. And shortly after that, this was 2014, because up until then I was just wearing an eye patch. And I was traveling through an airport, going through security, getting ready to go through as a DCA up in at Reagan National in Washington, D.C. And I turn around, there's a young little girl, about 6, 7 years old, eyes identical to mine, like a brown eye and a blue eye like mine. And she looked up at me, and I was just like, "Oh my gosh, look at this! Look at her!" And she grabbed her mom, tugged on her shirt. She goes, "Mommy, mommy, that man has eyes like I do." And I said, "No, sweetheart, your eyes are far more beautiful than mine. The good Lord made you that way." I said, "I have to try and look as cool as you. This isn't real. I have to wear a special lens to help me." She goes, "Why?" I said, "Well, I was a soldier at one point. I got blown up a bunch of times, so it's just I have problems with some brain injuries and causing some vision issues." I go, "That's all, but don't worry about that." I go, "You are far more beautiful." So it was my as I turned around, it was my turn to go to the TSA gentleman, check your ID and ticket. Once I get through security at the end, this where you put your shoes on and such, the mother comes over to me and she goes, "Thank you for that." I go, "For what?" I go, "Man, that was awesome. I mean, you have a beautiful little girl." And she goes, "No, really, thank you for that." She says, "My daughter gets bullied relentlessly
Mm.
because of her eyes. And I've never heard her say anything positive about her eyes. And this is the first time she said she's proud to have eyes like a soldier." And I was like, "Holy crap." I'm getting choked up telling the story. So that, I guess that was 2014. And I don't remember the girl's name. I didn't stay in touch with them. But I was like, you know what? Screw it. So the next day I called my doc. I'm like, "Hey, dude, let's just keep this color, man." So that's why it's just my own little thing that I've decided to do.
Thank you for sharing that. Yeah, the many traditions, right? See the eyes as the window to the soul, and so you recognize that clearly in that young girl who's probably never going to forget that brief encounter. Right? These seemingly random brief encounters take on
Yeah.
significance, often in a way that we don't fully appreciate as time marches on. You grew up in New Mexico, I believe.
Yes, I grew up in southern New Mexico. I was born in a very small town called Deming, New Mexico. It's very close to the border of Mexico right there. My family's from southern New Mexico, and southern Texas. And I was born in Deming, but I was raised in Las Cruces, New Mexico.
And I know there's a very rich legacy of service. Your grandfathers on both your mother and father's side served. Of course, your father,
Mhm.
your ex-wife, and your son. I've heard you talk about. Tell me a little bit about what it was like growing up in a family that um, uh, had such a deep and rich service to our country. How did that impact you growing up?
So I will say that the first heroes in my life, my first hero was my father. I think that's the same for a lot of us. Um, and my grandfathers and my great uncles who served during World War II. My grandmothers had the pictures of them in uniform on the wall, and I would when they were kids, right, just out there doing what the nation asked them to do and sent them forward to do. So those are my heroes growing up. And I would always ask. I'm the oldest grandson on my father's or grandchild on my father's side, and I asked a lot of questions because I played with a little green army man. You get like a Kmart and a little green tank, and so I'm sure some people are like, "Where's Kmart?" Yes, maybe some of your younger viewers are like, "What's Kmart?" Right? But I'll be 51 here pretty soon. So anyway, um, I would ask questions, and they never wanted to talk about the war. And any of us who have served and stepped into that arena and participate like done some of the stuff or experienced or whatever your interaction is, I don't talk about it. I don't glamorize war. Do I think it's necessary? Yeah, in order to maintain peace, you have to be capable of visiting violence on those that would do you harm. That's a reality. People can argue that all day. It doesn't make me a killer or a warmonger. No, it just means I'm willing to serve. So my father and grandfather never glamorized the war. They never talked about it. But whenever I could get anything out of them, usually they just tell me to shut up. Cállate el hocico. Ya no más. They would just tell me to shut up, basically. But when they did speak, they didn't speak about the war. They spoke about those to their left and right, those they served with. And the men in my family are very stoic, very reserved. Don't show a whole lot of emotion. I'm not saying they didn't love me and they didn't show me love, but I'm saying they're very, very reserved, traditional men. And when they spoke about these gentlemen that they served with, they spoke about them with reverence and love that impacted me tremendously as a kid. And I grew up, my culture, familias primera, families first, there's, and so I was like, man, who are these tios, these uncles that I don't get a chance to meet, or that lost their life? And we have a cousin that is on the Vietnam wall. He died in Vietnam. And so I would listen to these stories, and that inspired me to grow my family. Like, well, I want to experience this for myself, because of how impactful it was to them. And then being my heroes, of course, you try to emulate your heroes, and that inspired me to step into the arena, as they did. And as you stated, I'm blessed. Like, my best friend is what I refer to Kelly, my ex-wife now. I mean, she's the mother of my three sons. She served for 21 years as well, deployed 6 times. It's just, as towards the end, it just, we as a relationship never had a relationship. It was always about the children or work. So we realized that later on, and are no longer together. But like I said, she's still my best friend. So, and then of course, our oldest son is currently serving here at Fort Bragg. I live in North Carolina. He's been in the Army about 8 years. He's serving at Bragg. My youngest son just graduated high school last year, and looking at joining the military, but he wants to do it as an officer, as an RN. So we're pretty proud about that, right? We finally have an officer in the military in our family, not just a bunch of us enlisted. So that's our family. But I joke around with it a lot. But apple trees make apples, right? So that's just what my family does.
Yeah, that's beautiful, Rod. And my father was a World War II vet, and as you described, very stoic. It
Mhm.
There wasn't a lot of conversation about the war, um, even when there was curiosity. And as you pointed out, he would often, when he did talk about it, it was about his buddies, those
Yeah.
he served with, and some he was still in touch with. Of course, some he lost. Um, yeah, yeah. It was an interesting time. And your dad served in Vietnam.
Hmm.
Yeah, and that certainly was uh, a really interesting time, just culturally.
Yeah, it was, and when I told my father I was 17 years old, I graduated from high school a little bit early. Um, but when I told him I wanted to enlist, he was like, "Migo, I'd rather you not." He served during the Tet Offensive, which was the bloodiest year. We had the most casualties during that conflict. He didn't have the greatest experience, obviously. That was when we lost our cousin as well. So he was like, Mijo, just I'd rather you not. And I said, Dad, look, I have to do this. This is what I want to do. And he was like, okay, Mijo, go ahead. But then he gave me some advice that I didn't really understand. 17 years old. I didn't understand until, like, 8, 9 years later. As he said, Mijo, look, I just want you to understand what you're getting into. You're going to be put in situations that you're not going to understand, and that nothing can prepare you for. You're going to be asked to do things that people think you probably can't do, that you may even doubt yourself. He goes, all you have to do is just do more. He said, Migo, whatever's asked of you, just do more. And I was like, okay. And I didn't understand the wisdom behind that simple statement, just do
Yeah.
more. But then, it was years later when I was in selection, tryouts, right, to become a special forces guy, Green Beret. Um, it was during an individual event, and man, I was sucking. I mean, I was not doing good, right? I was just like, oh, and I started. Everyone gets those moments where they like start feeling sorry for themselves, right? And I did, and then I heard my dad's voice say, "Mijo, just do more." I
Mm.
took another step, do more. I kept doing it. I kept doing it, and then I really started reflecting. And my father never really said growing up. He never told us, "Hey, do your best, do your best." I've never heard that. We never heard that growing up. And then as I continue to ponder this, I'm out there like trying to breathe, right? In selection, just keep going, right? Just keep going. But I'm thinking about this, and if you really think about it, if someone says, "Do your best," what's your best? What is your best? No one knows their best. I've been in situations where I pushed past my limits that I didn't even know existed, right? I mean, you just keep doing. None of us, and you as a medical professional understand that no one really knows. So when you say do your best, that's a self-imposed finish line. That's a self-imposed cushy seat that we decide. but no one else knows that, and nobody knows that, because the human body, the human mind particularly, is far more capable than anything we could think of. So yeah, like I said, it took a while for that seed to grow, but when it hit, it completely reframed my approach on pretty much everything in my life. Is just, hey, just do more. And I reflected, and I don't compete with anybody. I understand my operational environment, and I want to be sure I'm at least at par with those to my left and right. I would love to beat them, but I compete with me every day. I do better than the guy I was yesterday, just to try to be a better version the next day. And all that came from those two words my dad said: just do more.
Well, I love that, Rod. That is so profound. And you're right. Yeah, do your best is, I love what you said. It's kind of a self-imposed bar.
Hmm.
It's not until you think you're at the very end of your rope that we have this potential to find a way. I've been struck in my work as a healthcare professional, and I'm a kidney specialist by training, and so many people through the years that I've interacted with, these seemingly random events. I get called to see someone who's in our emergency department and they're confronting their mortality. And often, they would go through these incredible challenges and sometimes a great deal of suffering. And I was always struck at the seemingly endless capacity for the human spirit to rise above the most profound circumstances. I think it was the Holocaust survivor, Viktor Frankl, right, who said he or she who has a why to live for can deal with almost any how. And I've learned a lot, and most of what I've learned through the years have been from other human beings, and
Hmm.
it's pretty incredible. Tell me a little bit about that journey of becoming a Green Beret, Rod. I'm sure there are many people that they've heard of Green Berets.
Right.
They're familiar with that, but that's
What?
that's that's kind of a that's kind of a I hate to use the word an exclusive sort of tribe, um, but this is not something that just anyone could do, right? So tell me about that. What was that like?
Yeah, sure. And I think exclusivity, calling it inclusive tribe, is because there are standards and we hold each other to those standards, So, trying to jump into that just to do more, right? I was inspired as a kid. I always wanted to, I did my research. I was a little nerdy kid that wanted to learn all I could about the military. At this point, Rambo had come out. I had seen the Green Berets. The only Navy SEAL movie at that point was Navy SEALs with Charlie Sheen, and I thought that was awesome too, right? But I did my research and looked at all the services and thought about what would I like to do more, and I just joined the Army initially because that was my goal. That was always my goal, to do that, to just do more, right? I wanted to try myself out, right? See, maybe I could do that, and um in getting there, obviously selection is we have a saying in Special Forces, like, selection is never ending. What that means, yes, you have the 24-day selection where they just beat you. I mean, I'm not really beating you, but, like, man, it's there's individual events and there's team events. You're allowed to sleep like 4 hours a night, max, and it's just no information is given. It's just it's and you are judged as an individual, then how you operate, to see if you can handle the circumstances. There's problem solving skills they assess. There's leadership skills that they assess that you don't know. And they don't yell at you. They're like, all right, here's the standard, or not the standard. Like, all right, here's some. Give an example. All right, be here at this time. You look at the whiteboard and it says, be here with this, wearing this, with this equipment in your pack, minimum weight, whatever, and in this uniform. And you show up, you have no idea what you're going to do. And then they tell you, okay, the briefing for this individual event, for example, would be, okay, here's some cones. They're on these unimproved roads. Follow the cones, move as quickly as you can, do your best. Go. You have no idea. Are you running 3 miles? Is this 24 miles? So you just go. And you're there with your peers. And like I said, I compete myself, but I don't want to be the guy in the back. You don't ever want to be last. So you just go. So there's like one example. It's I don't say it's a mind game, but tests and assesses your mental fortitude. Like, okay, how much do I go? What do I do? How do I go? And it was actually during one of those events when I was going as hard as I could go because I didn't know how far I was, and that's when my dad's voice popped up in my head. Hey, just do more, amigo. Just do more. So I wanted to do that, become a Special Forces Green Beret because we of all the special operations forces, there's an intense rivalry, but there's a lot of crossover. I mean, if you talk to any of my brothers in arms, my comrades, whether it's a MARSOC Raider or even the Force Recon guys from way back in the day, or my Frogman brothers in the Navy SEALs, or our Air Force Special Tactics guys, which I don't think get talked about enough. But there's very small community, but them cats, or even within the Army, we have our Ranger battalion. I mean, we're the same type of people. We really are. So you think about it, like think about professional athletes, and then there's different leagues, right? And that's really what it is. So that's why I say it's an exclusive group. And it is never ending, because after, for us, the selection is 24 days. And then for me, I was an 18 Delta. I was a medic. My Q course, qualification course, was 2 years long, because I was trained in everything from veterinary medicine to dentistry to doing labs to surgeries to, I mean, you name it. If it had something to do with medical, preventive medicine, I mean, everything. So it was a really academically challenging. So you do that, and then you get to a team, and yeah, each of us have a specialty, but you're one team. You're a special forces operator first, so you will do direct action or unconventional warfare or foreign internal defense, teaching other nations how to defend and fight for themselves, so we don't have to send our men and women to fight for them. Counterterrorism, there's so many things that we do as far as skill sets, that I think Special Forces Green Berets have the broadest mission. So if you're I to help people understand a little bit, analogy I use is, if you look at law enforcement, the Department of Justice, you have the FBI, the DEA, the ATF, the U.S. Marshal's Office. You can look at those and be like, all right, yeah, I know what the ATF's involved: alcohol, tobacco, firearms. I know what the others do. But what does the FBI do? Well, they do all of that too, but then they do this, right? So it's a very broad skill set and mission set. And also, we're taught foreign languages, and I really wanted to expand my horizons and work in with people of different nations, different languages, different belief systems, to try to improve my own communication, but to learn how to be a better human. You'll always have an opportunity to learn that from everybody.
Mm. Wow, yeah, it would be hard for anyone who's never experienced something like that to appreciate just how demanding at every level. Uh, and so, would it be fair to say, I love just what you started with about your father's voice, do more. Uh, I would think, and again, I can only use my own life experience, Rod, where many times I thought I was uh, at a place where I simply could not move further. And then somehow you find a way. I learned a lot about myself as I continue to develop and mature and have these experiences. How you must have learned a lot about yourself along the way there, even when you think you go in knowing who you are, right? I mean,
Oh,
what were some of the things about yourself that maybe you would have never imagined possible, had you not had those experiences?
yeah, I think my problem solving skills, growing up where I grew up, if you never leave your hometown, that's fine. But you think like everybody else around you, right? You're involved with your surroundings, and you work, like that saying, like, you are who you hang out with, right? You are who you, and that's absolutely true. So when it comes to, that's why I say problem solving skills, is I think, in a different life, I probably would have been an engineer, or something like that. Like, I love math. I love to figure things, like, how do you figure this out? Like, okay, this. So anyway, but for me, what the the best way I could explain it is, if I go and learn how other people think, what other people believe, then it challenges my own way of thinking. It even challenged my own thought processes. I know how to solve this But if I see how someone else has solved it in a different way, well, maybe their way is better, or maybe I can use what they did to make mine more efficient. And that's, I'm just using like a solving a problem as an analogy. But if you look at everyday life, that's what you do. You wake up every day. Okay, I have things I got to get done. There's certain things that have to happen. Some things may not. Okay, what are those are problem solving skills, and me experiencing it in various parts of the world with various different people and operating at a level that with my peers, the hombres to my left and right were, man, some of the smartest, quick-witted, sometimes mean, uh, meanest guys, that tough love thing. But I mean, they push you because they push you because that tough love is because they want you to be better, because we have a responsibility to each other. So that environment, it's incredibly, I guess, aggressive. You could say that, or it's very and Shark Tank, right? Like you got to perform. That's why selection is never ending. Because I know in special forces in our community, if you're not meeting the standards and you're just not the guy, or something significant happens that is completely contrary to who we are in special forces, I think of the special operations, we're the only one like this, where, okay, because everyone had a job, an MOS, right? Whether you're an infantry guy or a communications guy before you became a special forces operator. What we do is, okay, well, you're not what we're looking for, and they take your special forces tab and your Green Beret because it's an award, and okay, go back and do, maybe you're just a better light wheel mechanic than you thought you could be as Green Beret. So it's never ending. And I saw that occur with
Yeah.
senior guys throughout my career. So that standard is always there. So you're always pushing yourself to perform. And what I learned about myself is, if I'm in an environment where we are pushing each other, then I'm encouraged, right? I love to be around those that will just keep pushing you. And sometimes, like, I joke around about like being mean, but like, just push me, just like, okay, just challenge me. Because I love a challenge. I've always loved the challenge. I love someone when they tell me you can't do that or say no. It's like, all right, well, I can't do that, or you don't think I can do that. Those are two things.
Yeah.
So in that environment, it really pushed me to be a better, and learn that if I didn't, I don't know if I'd be the guy I am today, because I have three younger brothers that are still in New Mexico, and I'm not throwing shade at my brothers. I love them. They're great. They're great men, but we approach life so differently. We look at things so differently, but we were raised in the same house with the same set of values, with the same in the same environment. And I look at them and I'm like, I I I want to be proud and content with the person I am, but they are so different. I mean, incredibly different with everything that they do, that I that's what I would be, and I'm happy I am who I am.
Mm.
I don't know if any of that made sense.
Yes, thank you. It made total sense. I've been struck just in listening to you on the internet, YouTube, some of the things where I've heard you just talking about the work that you do, Rod. There is very little ego that comes across, and I wonder, when you're in a team, such a sophisticated, highly skilled team as you are with the Green Beret, your brothers and sisters serving with you, I would imagine that on some level you have to kind of leave your ego at the door, right? There's an intense sort of interpersonal. You become a shared brain in many respects. Everyone has to be in synchronicity. I mean, is that accurate what I'm
It
thinking?
is. It absolutely
You
is.
need,
So
you need your
I'll give you an
ego, of
example.
course, but on some level, it's always about the team, right? It's always about the big picture, the others contributing,
Mhm.
being part of something much greater. Is that a fair?
It is, and to touch on your ego comment, that's absolutely what it is. So when before I went to become a special forces guy, I mean, there wasn't anyone in my unit that was faster. I mean, some people probably been a bit smarter, but I mean, I was always like first, right? So, if you're in a certain league with people, nothing against them, right? It's just all right. It's just we're all different. We're all born with the level of intelligence we'll always have. We just have different functional capacities and we different genetics. I mean, it's just who we are. The good Lord bless you with the genes you have. What are you going to do with them? Um, it's easy to get complacent, but if you're in an environment where there's always someone smarter, stronger, faster, better at shooting, better at assessing something, or better at sending a satcom blast, or better, like, if you're in an environment where people are pushing you, like, holy crap, like, you don't, like I said, you don't ever want to be last. You don't want to be that guy, because I have a responsibility to them. All right. For the same reason your father talked about those he served with, my father and grandfather and uncles talked about those they served with. The reason they talk about them is because they had a responsibility to them. We none of us that deployed or did anything that we do or have done or will do wrote the foreign policy that sent you forward, made the decision. Those happen in DC. We don't do that. We're just, okay, we do it. And when you get there, really, if you ask them, are you here because of this foreign policy? No, no, they're there because they committed to our nation to serve us in whatever capacity our elected leaders deemed necessary. That's it.
Mm.
That's why you're there. And when you get down there and in those moments, it's those to your left and right. Right. That's why, some people can't fathom the level of heroism that particularly our Medal of Honor recipients, have exhibited. And when you think about it, that's love, man. They're just doing that. They weren't doing it for foreign policy. They were doing it because of those to their left and right. And that's what it boils down to. So, the ego piece, at least for me, I'm not going to say we don't have any ego guys or gals out there. There are, there's, plenty of them have podcasts and they're easy to find, right? There's a lot of ego out there, but I choose not to be, because I have found that the loudest person in the room is probably the weakest. The person talking the most is probably the most insecure. The individual that's claiming the most is probably the biggest liar. So, when I showed up to my special forces detachment on day one, I've always been an athlete. I make sure that I'm in incredibly good shape, or as good shape as I could possibly be. I know I'm not an idiot, but I just shut up and listen. And I don't bring any ego with me anywhere, because I don't. Why would I? If you bring ego into a relationship, a conversation, any situation, any social interaction, or even if you're on your own and you're trying to do something, your ego gets in the way, it's going to impede any progress that could potentially come out of that engagement or interaction. So I try to leave ego at the door, right? I know what I bring to the table. I know what's in my pockets. I know my experience. I choose to be that warrior in the garden that everyone thinks is a gardener.
Yeah, you really have to know who you are to manifest in that way. There are two things I've heard you say in other conversations, Rod, that jumped out at me. You sort of alluded to this. One was with respect to service, that it was about the people, not the policy, which you just reiterated. The other is this. I'm paraphrasing, but you said something to the effect that devotion does not exist without love. Love is the core. Devotion emerges from that. Devotion to country, devotion to family, familia, devotion to your brothers and sisters in service, and that really touched me. That's pretty profound.
And it's true if anyone thinks about it. I think today, particularly in certain communities, the word love isn't used enough. I know, I'll say my community. We're like, oh, we don't say that. Like, no, I grew up in a home where my father, like I referenced, he didn't show emotion, but my dad told me he loved me every day. So did my grandfather. So we said it, and I consider that was the basis for me. Like, where did this guy start talking? Why did he start talking about love? Well, that's the way I was raised. And that you can't devote yourself to something, and devotion, some people may think it's a relative term, but I don't think it is. You devote. If a devotion is, okay, whatever I've committed to, whoever I've committed to, whatever that is, like, every part of me is devoted, committed towards that, whether it's the mission, whether it's those that I'm serving with, or the most important thing for me today is my children and my grandchildren, right? That's my primary devotion. But you can't have that without love, so you have to admit it. We have to say it. And I don't think people use that word enough, love, because if you don't talk about it, then you're kind of diminishing the opportunities that it will present.
That has been so true in the medical community. The L word does not come up that often, and it's kind of an in your face, striking paradox in a healing profession where you're really looking to develop relationship capital and I think I love that connection between love and devotion. You've had 10 tours. I believe I have that right.
Mhm. Yep.
And um, and I want to get into obviously the Global War on Terrorism Memorial Foundation that you now lead. Um, but I think it it might be challenging for some people to appreciate that the war on terrorism. I mean, war is war, but the war on terrorism feels there's a different sort of playing field, playbook,
Mhm.
context. I think we can look back historically at World War One, World War II. There were these sort of defined beginning. There was an ending. You learn about the players and the people and the politic. The war on terrorism feels a little bit different in that the the, the enemy takes the form of different sort of countries, people, context, politics. What is, I mean, is there truth to that? How would you distinguish
Yeah,
the
I
war
I
on
think
terrorism, say, to other wars that have sort of defined the history of our country?
right. So I think one of the things where people have a challenge understanding what it is I want you to think about just for a second those that have fought in it, right? If you look at the numbers, so World War II, 11% of our nation fought. Korea was 7%. Vietnam, 4.3% of those veterans, those combat veterans out there. You're talking about 1% of our nation. So that's a very small percent. Now, I think that's great. I'm not looking at that as a negative thing. I think it's a beautiful statement that not everyone has to do what my familia has chosen to do. But because of that, there's a level of ignorance, right? There's a term that's tossed around quite frequently, a civilian military divide. There's not a divide, there's just a misunderstanding. What my father experienced coming home from Vietnam, that was a divide, no question about
Uh,
it. And because of his generation, that will never occur again, right? And it was shameful how that population was treated. Because again, to remind everybody, we are not involved in the policy or decisions to send us forward. It's not. It doesn't happen like that. So unfortunately, when people have, and when you say war, it should evoke emotion. It should, like, it's a profound statement, but don't direct that at those that are doing it for you selflessly, right? They're not doing it for self-aggrandizement. You don't know who they are. They're not damn sure ain't doing it for money, right? They make less than teachers. So it's good. It's important to separate the people from the policy and politics. So now I'll pivot to the war on terrorism. So the fact that there's a tremendous level of ignorance that exists, there's even an ignorance that exists within our community, the veteran community. So nobody considers Operation Overlord, which is the named operation of the D-Day invasion, its own separate war. And because right now people think, well, we had two wars, Afghanistan and Iraq. Well, did we? Did you really? Do you understand how this nation sends our sons and daughters, mothers and fathers off to fight? It's done by operations, right? So at what point do we consider Operation Enduring Freedom its own separate war, or Operation Iraqi Freedom, Inherent Resolve, New Dawn, etc.? Any other named operation I can name for you that have been conducted and authorized under the auspices of the Authorization of Use of Military Force, the AUMF, signed September 18, 2001, that empowered the President of the United States to fight terrorism globally. Now, I'm not. I won't get into discussion on whether we need that or not. I personally think we do, because it's great to find people that are trying to, conduct another 9/11 and prevent that. There are people, whether anyone wants to think about it that way or not, that would love nothing more than to come to your house and visit harm onto you. That's the truth. I've come face to face with many of them. But that aside, people don't understand that, even in the veteran community. So the AUMF is still in effect. The Global War on Terrorism Service Medal, the Global War on Terrorism Expeditionary Medal are still being awarded to service members that meet the criteria for the awarding of those medals. And here's something else: the Global War on those two medals I just mentioned. My father has Vietnam Medal, Korea Medal, World War II. I mean, it's what we do. It's how we fight wars and recognize those that serve in it. Those medals have been awarded in Africa, South America, Caribbean, Pacific, and the Middle East. So this really is a global war. So when people think about it, they're like, well, it's hard to understand because it's incredibly complex, and the world is a different place than it was, heck, 5 years ago. But when you think about, we've been at this war we're coming up on our 24th year. It's very hard for people to understand. So I would challenge anyone to listen to what I've just shared and then get smart on it, read about it, right? There is no bookends. Will this war ever end? Probably not. There's a reality. Both of my grandsons were born here at Womack Army Medical Center at Fort Bragg, and as I was holding them, I'm like, man, I'm standing in a room of our family. All of us are veterans in this war, and at some point, if my two grandsons decide to join the family business, they could be serving in the same war. And it's really unique because never have we existed as a nation where our sons and daughters watch their mothers and fathers go off to fight in a war only to serve in that same war. My oldest son has been in the Army 8 years and deployed 4 times, was 4 years old when the towers fell on September 11th, which then officially started this war. What would it have been like for my dad to watch me graduate airborne school and go fight the Viet Cong?
Yeah. Wow.
Or my grandpa to finish it, to watch my father complete his training and go fight Nazis or serve in the Pacific. So when I say it like that, it's very people like, oh my gosh, that's crazy. Well, yeah, that is crazy, but that's a reality of so few families. I mean, there's a lot of us, but such a small percent of our population. So that lends credence to the level of ignorance. And there's nothing wrong with being ignorant. There's a lot of things I don't know. Definite ignorances I just don't know. But that's why the mission that I've been working on for darn near a decade is so important, because in the city that makes those decisions and sends our sons and daughters off to fight in this incredibly complex, misunderstood war, there's no reminder. There's nowhere for us to go. There's nowhere for us to gather in the city that makes those decisions.
Mm.
So the building of this national memorial is more important than people probably will ever understand. The people, when I started working on this project, the people that pushed back the most were like, why are you doing that? We don't need that. No, we don't. And I'm like, was the actual veteran community and their families. And I was like, what do you mean? And then it hit me. I'm like, wait a minute, I don't want to build this memorial for me. I want to build it for them. Because remember what I said about military service? Why do they serve? Why do they fight? Why are they doing what they do on the ground, placing themselves in harm's way for those? It's because of the love they have to those that are left and the right. So if they feel they don't need it, what I started as telling them, I said, okay, well, I want you to think about somebody that didn't come home that you may know or heard of, or someone that is struggling right now because of some of the war that came home, because the war does come home. Do they deserve it? And every single one of them like, absolutely, hell yeah, they deserve it. It's okay, cool. I want you to think about them. I'll think about you. And when I say it like that, that reminds them of why they serve, what they're doing, and the strength that they bring to the table. And I have full belief, and it's not just something I really do believe that once we do this and I make this nation take a reverent knee and honor them and respect all those that have served in this incredibly complex, difficult to define war, those that have given so much, that struggle so much, will feel a sense of value. Like, damn, thank you. Like, wow, like a real more than 10% off on Veterans Day at a Golden Corral, right? Like, when the nation does this, then we as a nation can impart value onto them. Because you know what? When someone feels value, you know what they're not going to do? They're not going to kill themselves. Of the 55 friends of mine that are no longer here because of this conflict, 10 lost the war at home. 45 were due to operations in theater. So the war does come home, and this mission to build this memorial could not be any more important than anything, because we don't honor the men and women and those families that step forward to serve and defend us all, to allow you and I, Doc, to have this cool conversation. Who's going to do it in the future?
Yeah.
right? There's the burden. The burden is pretty heavy right now on a very, very small percent of our population. You just look at the recruiting numbers, right? I mean, it's so to highlight us and not show us as broken, but to show the strength, resiliency, commitment, and devotion that we have given to so many that have no idea who the hell we are. I think will inspire those to serve, because that's the strength of our nation. If you want to look at those that are serving, fighting, and dying, have served and fought and died, they're the mirror image of everybody else. That's the strength of our nation, is just your average everyday American coming together and say, you know what, I think I have something to contribute. My dos centavos have value, right? And then they jump in, and it's a beautiful thing. And that's how I look at this incredibly complex project that I've been working on for about 2 years, that I've had to pass two pieces of legislation to get to the House and Senate. I mean, that's a whole 12-hour podcast if you want to get into the bureaucratic steps and things that I have had to do to get to this point. But the point is, that's what I'm doing right now, and I hope to cut the ribbon on this thing here in the next 3, maybe 4 years.
Okay. Wow, what a an incredible message and perspective. Yeah, I did wonder how steep the hill has been as you awaken others to the importance of this, and attract resources, and on some level it would seem, yeah, of course it's a good thing to do, but for many of the things that you touched on, this is a different sort of socio-political context. Um, uh, and so it's not a quick A to B, right? You've been on a
Nope.
pretty significant uphill climb, opening eyes, um, speaking with passion. And it sounds like you're, just from what you shared, you're making progress, right? You feel there's a
Yes.
horizon where you can see this manifesting.
Absolutely. Like I said, I've been working on this for quite a period of time. But that is, we've done things, and that people have told me were impossible to do. It really is, like, where this memorial will be built is on the National Mall, on the reserve. And the second bill that I passed was that one, to get an exemption so we could build it there. Otherwise, it was going to be in between office buildings and the fabric of the city, and no one would have really seen it or had the opportunity to learn more about these incredible two current generations of fighters. And that's why this memorial is so unique, is we're engaging two whole different generations of servicemen and women and their families. That no other war memorial can do that. And that's good. I'm not saying that's a bad thing. This is the longest conflict that we've ever been in, but that does not mean we shouldn't address it now, because if we don't, then when are we going to do it? Right. So it's incredibly important. And it's my current life's mission right now. So outside of being a good father and grandfather.
Beautiful. Well, it gives me hope, just hearing you translate that passion into something enduring and something that raises everyone's consciousness. It at a time where everyone's just so focused on their own lives, getting through the day, all the hubbub out there, it can be hard to just be still enough, long enough to bring one's awareness to just how huge and profound this is. And I've heard you say, Rod, that and I think this too, at least in my experience, is not put in the spotlight, but there are a lot of non-military personnel, right, whose lives are lost, impacted, who are part of the infrastructure of
Yeah.
this
Yeah. So,
terrorism, right? I mean, it's
right. So
bigger than
that's what,
just those that have enlisted and
right. So this is about the people that have been mobilized and served and fought in whatever capacity. That it's not just us uniformed service members.
yeah,
Is our most cherished stakeholders are those that never came home, right? But that's uniform and non-uniform. Our very first killed in action, the very first casualty we experienced as a nation as a result of the enemy, was a gentleman by the name of Johnny Michael Spann, killed November 25th, 2001. Mike, as he went by, was a Marine in his previous career, but was working for the CIA Special Activities Division, and was part of the first boots on the ground when those SF teams, those Green Beret teams hit the ground. With Team Alpha, they had some CIA cats with them, right? And that was Mike, a warfighter. And I've been on target many times. Uh, People dressed like me, looking like me, carrying the same equipment, same weapons, going in, hitting targets, doing what it is that we do. There are people that are in and out, going on target, doing what we do that aren't in the military. Bullets and bombs are indiscriminate during time of war. I think everybody can agree to that. So it wasn't until 2019, the Department of Labor, who tracks that data, tried to figure out, well, how many lives have we lost that weren't military in the or supporting theater operations, in the global war on terrorism. Now we're over 7,000 uniformed service members. I will guarantee, you know, probably nobody listening knows this, but there are over 3,400 non-uniformed.
Wow.
That's astounding. That's almost like it's almost like shameful. We don't know that. We don't talk about them. But
Mm.
guess what? We have men and women performing a wartime mission in a hostile fire environment that was once performed by one of us in uniform. That affords us the luxury to have such a small percent of Americans that serve today. So it's not just those military individuals that are out there putting their lives on the line, whether they're a government official or a government worker, right? Whether it's the FBI, CIA, any of the other three-letter agencies, or whether they're some type of supporting the theater efforts as a contractor. It doesn't matter. They were out there doing a role where it was always just the military. Look at World War II, right? Like, that was all. How many civilians did they have serving at that point? I don't think very many. I'm sure there were a few, but they weren't every single person wore the uniform. But we don't have to do that anymore. So that adds to the complexity and level of misunderstanding or ignorance that exists around this war that has been going on and will probably continue for who knows the foreseeable future, right? The terrorist organizations still pop up. There are people on this planet that want nothing to do than to destroy your way of life. It's pretty obvious. Anyone denies that, got their head in the sand. Um, and that's not me. I'm not me being a hater. I'm just telling you, that's my entire adult life has been in service to this nation in uniform, and now I'm trying to do it in a different way by honoring. So I keep my finger on the pulse. I stay up on information. I'm involved as much as I'm allowed to with things that occur. But that's reality. So it's the beautiful thing about this memorial is I'm not selling snake oil. I'm not making everything I said, Doc, you could say. I didn't make it up. Those aren't my words. Yes, I used them. I pulled all this together to create, to craft our messaging, but that's realities. Those are just basic realities and truths. And one thing we'll never deny is truths. And I want to tell the whole story on how we fought this war, because if we don't, then I'm not doing my job. I'm being ignorant and I'm being selfish. And now I'm making it about me when it's got nothing to do with what I have done or my family has done. It's about the beautiful people of this nation who I consider our greatest asset.
Yeah, I mean, that's just so apparent. Rod, on behalf of all Americans, I'm just, I get the chills just listening to you. It's such an incredible, it's obvious that it's an incredible source of purpose and meaning in all that you do. Yeah, but before we bring this to closure, Rod, and I'm so appreciative of your precious time and openness. It really touching. This is going to touch a lot of people who listen to this. Um, I notice in the background, Rod, you've got a few framed letters, and you sharing what's behind you from.
Sure. So I referenced two pieces of legislation that we had to pass to get to where we are. So the first one was passed in 2017, and that granted us an exemption from a federal law that says a war has to be over for 10 years before a national war memorial can be built. Wrong hand. So this one was signed by President Trump in August of 2017. So then after that, I went to work to pass the bill that everyone said was absolutely impossible. And that was to get this memorial built on the National Mall. And just for context, nothing new has been approved since 2003. In 2003, they said, hey, the National Mall is a finished work of art. No mas, man, no more. And everybody's tried and no one's been able to do that. And that's through engagements with our stakeholders. Everyone goes, it has to be there, Rod. Like we got to do this. And I'm not a politics guy. I'm not a Capitol Hill guy. I got no aspirations of running for any kind of office at any point in my life. So this isn't like, oh, here's another chance for me to go to Capitol Hill and get to make friends. No, that's not what this was. So then I went to work on that, and it took us a couple of Congresses to pass. But then this one right here, wrong side again. This one, this one right here in December of 21, President Biden signed that bill into law, granting us the exemption for this memorial to be built within the reserve portion of the National Mall. So that's what's over my shoulders. This one right here, this flag over here was my retirement flag. When you retire, you get a flag, and it's very special to me. And this flag right here, and so, man, no one's ever asked me this. A lot of times when we would deploy, we have body armor on, right? And many, you have this big plate carrier, and then you have this big metal, or not metal, but ceramic, typically, body armor, right? Like the thing that stops the bullets. A lot of us would put flags in there, right? So we were always carrying a flag with us. This one here, I keep looking the wrong way. This one belonged to a friend of mine that is no longer with us.
Mm. Wow. Thank you. Thank you for sharing that, Rod. And so I've been talking to Michael Rod Rodriguez, who's the president and CEO of the Global War on Terrorism Foundation, to establish a memorial and to bring the spotlight to the people, the stories, this chapter of who we are in America now, and who we will likely continue to be as we protect our borders and protect our freedom. And I'm just so indebted, Rod, to your service, and I'm really just grateful to have met you. I believe that nothing that happens in my life is a random coincidence, and to bring to cross paths with you and to share a little bit of your life force is gives me hope, and I will never forget that those two words, right? Do more. And boy, your life is manifesting that to the fullest extent. Thank you.
Well, yeah, I'm trying. I really am. Doc, I want to thank you for the opportunity to talk today, and I want to be sure that we all have a role to play, right? Patriotism and service is not exclusive to those of us that raised our right hands, recited the oath of enlistment, picked up a gun, and ran to the sound of gunfire. Patriotism is and service is what I still do. I'm not in uniform. I've been out of the Army for a while, but I still try. So I really hope that everyone understands it. Like, we all have an opportunity to define ourselves every single day. We all have an opportunity every single day, as my dad says, just to do more. And I don't base anything. I can't change the past. That I can't forecast the future. I can plan for it, but I can't forecast it, but what I can do is affect the now. So I think, we all have opportunities to do things, and I think it's our responsibility to us as a nation, right, to do that in some manner. So I want to thank you for what it is you do, Doc. I appreciate it.
My pleasure. Now is where it's at, and you remind us of that. And so, thank you for listening to the Mightiest Warriors podcast. Again, to Michael Rod Rodriguez, our first guest. This is going to be a very hard act to follow.
Oh, no, I'm sure you're going to get some pretty awesome.
Out of the gate. I thank you for that, Rod, and peace, brother.
Gracias.